like getting to that time, and I don't want to keep everybody on such a beautiful day. But thank you everybody for joining us. I am really, really happy to have Kathleen Amaral with us. I can't even really name all the organizations that she is connected to and all the people that she touches through her work. But I can say that we are really lucky. I'm really lucky to have her on my team at the ARC and AFAM. So I get double work with her. And she and I are similar in the way that we have a lot of balls in the air, juggling quite a bit. And although I think I drop more of them and trip over them more than Kathleen does. But I'm just really happy. She's got a ton of knowledge on what's going on with DESE and has been following it from the beginning of COVID for us. So I'm really happy to turn things over to her to talk about the guidance. And let me double check this is the right one. Yes, this looks good. And so Kathleen, can I turn it right over to you?
Absolutely. And I'll just, I apologize. My internet is intermittent. I'm here, but I'm behind the mask of a picture of my 3 kids. So after I do my presentation, I'll share I'll take that off. But yeah, thank you. So today I'm going to try to keep my eye on the time because there's so much to share. And I've streamlined it so that it's not so overwhelming. Much of this people know bits and pieces of. Some of you know more than others. And sometimes when giving a presentation like this, knowing that there's more information to come, sometimes it leaves more questions than answers. And so I encourage people to both, I think it would be interesting to hear your experience in the chat, how things have been working. Have you or your students, your sons and your daughters, your family member under 22, have they gone back to summer services? If that was something in their individual education plan, that would be interesting to hear. As well as if there are questions, I certainly can answer, but know that we're very excited. On July 30th, we've invited, and he's accepted, Russell Johnston will be here with Maura on Thursday, July 30th. And the timing, we booked it a while ago and his schedule is quite full. But the timing is really good. So if you can mark that down on your calendar, because there's some more, like I just said, there's more to come. And there's more to come a few days before he's with us here. So that will be great for him to clarify and give you an idea of the work that has been put in through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We sit here and it feels so distant. There's local control. There's so many variables, and what is happening in one city or town is not necessarily happening the same way in another city or town. And so, of course, as family members, we want the best for our sons and daughters, and those of us who are still in school and advocating for ourselves. We sometimes feel that people aren't hearing us. So to have him here, that'll be a great opportunity to clarify and to open the lines of communication even more. So this is my middle son. I start with this picture and that's me in the middle. I share this with his permission. He's a ham. He likes his picture taken. But as you can see, I've shared the picture on the left before in a previous presentation. I tend to talk about the positive. I tend to be a realist and kind of forge ahead with a positive attitude most of the time. My husband might not agree with me on that, but the reality is this has been the best of times and this has been the worst of times. And I try not to think about the worst of times. I try to look forward to better times. And this has been an opportunity for flexibility in our schedules. I'm really grateful that we're healthy. I'm able to work from home, sometimes through the night, but well, that was good. It's because I took a nap and I got back up. So, so you know, but it works for us as best as it can. And you know, we've coordinated a schedule. I'm also grateful that I don't try to rely on her all the time, but I have an 18-year-old who is home and is able to kind of help hang out with her brother because he does require me or somebody to follow him around throughout the day, because you don't know what will happen. Lemon peels, get in the lawnmower and all of that. So it's been a challenge, and it's been wonderful all at the same time. And I just share that because like you, I care for somebody very deeply who is struggling in an incredibly huge way right now, dependent upon the day and dependent upon his ability to articulate his wants and his needs and his frustrations. So I just wanted to share that. So you can move it to the next slide, Maura, which I believe is, okay. So this is just a little bit of information that you probably remember in late June. Well, lots of things have come out over the weeks. And so in late June, the commissioner sort of put out initial reopening guidance. Now, that wasn't specific to special ed education. However, it just outlined prioritizing the safety of students. And we have to remember that we are working in tandem with the state. And so when phase 1, phase 2, and all of that, so we are operating under the health and safety precautions and recommendations that are put out by the governor for the state. And so on June 25th, the commissioner did put out this comprehensive, really comprehensive, they're all comprehensive, guidance for what needs to be put in place with the health and safety of students in mind, and teachers. And the goal, although this is guidance, the goal is that, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, wants as many students back in school as possible. And that could look different ways. And so up through August, districts right now, you're not hearing a lot of stuff. We can talk a little bit about the summer, and I'd like to hear what's happening with you. But with all of you regarding summer and your students, and if that's happening remotely and whatnot, but you can put that in the chat. The commissioner has told districts, you have to come up with 3 plans. We need 3 plans to us by the beginning of August, the end of July, and he recommends that, don't share these plans, engage people in the process, engage teachers, engage stakeholders, engage parents about what might work best and what's not worked and how this will look. But that there should be 3 separate plans in place. Those plans include starting with assuming that the precaution, COVID numbers have gone down, and that there isn't a need, say, this isn't necessarily going to happen, but say there isn't a need for any kind of precautions, that would actually be above 1. That would be, we're just going to go back in person and we're done. The next plan would be in person with those precautions. The second plan would be a plan that would include both in person and remote. And then there's the option of, dependent upon the ability of a district to provide a certain level of support, all things considered, it could be fully remote. And so that's what districts are doing right now for all students. And I just want, it's not on this slide, but in talking about the summer school guidance that came out shortly after this, I think it was a week later, there was comprehensive guidance for students who would be going back to school for extended school year, ESY. And there were, with the ESY, districts could start the beginning of July like they typically would. And they were told that they should make, they were told that this is just guidance, but they should make a reasonable effort to have in-person summer services after July 6th, which is typically right after the 4th of July when ESY begins for students that have that service in their IEP. But that if a district isn't able to provide in-person services for summer school by July 6th, that doesn't mean that the following week, that doesn't mean that next week or the week after, that they would be able to provide some sort of services. And I've heard from some families, and you may have this experience where your district did contact you to say, but what about in August? We have these 4 days that your student comes in for XYZ services. And it may seem strange, well, why would they want my son or daughter to come in for four times? What difference is that going to make? But it's because they have been planning for, and that they were encouraged to make a reasonable effort to provide in-person supports. And then the initial summer school guidance also identified that there were certain student groups that should be prioritized for in-person. And that would be students with disabilities and those who have the ESY obviously in their IEP grid already. But then they also identified for the summer school, there's a possibility for students they've just really been not engaging well, that during the summer, from March through June, remote learning was just not working well. And so they prioritized those students who were not engaging all the time remotely, or they also were prioritizing students who, have some significant social, emotional, or behavioral risks associated with not being in school since March. And they also did say that if there are students that you feel would benefit greatly from that additional time, the additional attention, because of any of the above reasons, that they too should be prioritized. So there may be instances where students don't have extended school year in their IEP. However, they could have been prioritized to receive some services during the summer. I know in my district that's not happening. We were the district leadership, weighed all of the options and came to the conclusion that they were not able to meet certain criteria, and they opted for full remote for the summer. Let me see. And so for the summer,
you want me to change sides? Just let me know.
Okay, yeah, let me see if there's something else. Yeah, so the summer programming too. So the guidance for summer, they were very clear. DESE said, this is just guidance for summer, that there'll be additional guidance coming. And so let me make sure I have okay. So you can change the slide there. Okay, so recently we all either read, looked at, or heard about this 18 pages document of guidance specific to special education services. One thing that the Department of Ed has been very clear about is that it is so important to have a two-way street, communication with families, learning what's going to work best and being flexible and creative around that. The DESE, don't quote me, but they said something to the effect of, we need to operate by thinking it's going to work. We got to come at it from a perspective of confidence, not fear, not worry about what's not going to work, but we're going to do our best. We're better together. And the ARC of Massachusetts has been quite fortunate to have been engaged on several occasions and asked for feedback through stakeholder groups. And I can tell you that DESE is committed to hearing from families and committed to hearing from districts and hearing from stakeholders and putting any guidance that they've put out, while might not be perfect, it has been looked at through a vast array of perspectives and lenses, and they've come up with what they felt to be the most appropriate. And right on the Department of Ed website there, and I'll give it at the end of the presentation, there's an email, and they encourage folks to reach out. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, reach out, share your experience, because it does inform them, and they are listening. And so don't feel that your thoughts aren't valid or important to the department. They ultimately are going to put out what they put out. But as you can see, since March, things have morphed, things have changed, and that's because of the feedback that they've received. So they definitely are looking at things from the eyes and the perspective from a variety of stakeholders, and we at the ARC are very fortunate to be of those folks. So right here you can see it was exciting to read this. It's exciting to know that for returning in the fall, that students, they just must receive all the services that are documented in their IEPs. This doesn't have to necessarily happen in person. That's the hope, is that we get as many students in as possible. There's a strong emphasis on providing that in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible, of course, while abiding by all the safety measures and precautions. And they have identified that students who are a priority are here in this slide, the pre-K, and then students with complex and significant needs. And so students, they need to meet a criteria to be this priority, and those criteria are listed below. I won't go through them, but you'll receive these slides after the presentation. But there are lots of groups of folks that they want to be a priority, even if other students, non-special ed students, are receiving, even if the plan is for a district to do remote for students, they need to make a strong effort to the greatest extent possible to have students with special education needs who are prioritized here. And there's more to come about students that aren't prioritized here who receive special education. So that is to come as well. So they're not completely left out of this, but there's more to come on that. And they really identified the easiest grouping of people to bring back would be students who are in smaller groupings and self-contained classes. And one thing to note that they did also mention for returning to school in the fall is that even if there is a hybrid, even if the district comes up with a plan, and whether it be for inability to, the school and the buildings aren't able to have as many students in the buildings as possible, because the guidance for reopening is not limited amount of groups. It's really looking to the space and if the school district can allow for social distancing. So they're not gonna keep groups to necessarily 10 if they're in a large room and able to socially distance. So they want districts and families to work together and be creative, and that those services could be provided in a hybrid model, and they could be in the community. So if if on the IEP certain services are written in and they can't be provided in this way or that way, they recognize that the Department of Ed, that the YMCA, for instance, they did identify the YMCA as one particular example. They're operating with precautions in mind. So that is a space that potentially could be occupied by a student and a staff to conduct some sort of services. So that's not off the table. I think you can change the slide. I know I'm taking up a lot of time. I apologize. Okay, so yeah, huge emphasis on family engagement. The department, hearing from stakeholders, recognize that they don't want to be a one-way street. They don't want to tell people. They don't want to notify you what's happening with your sons and daughters. They want to engage you. They encourage districts and schools to engage the families and talk about what's going to work best for that student, and work through those things before solidifying. Because while a student is going to receive all of the supports and services and in their IEP, it's not necessarily, it's going to look different still. It's not necessarily, although potentially prioritized for in-person, it's not necessarily going to happen in person, but all of those things are going to be required to provide a student. So, and if it's a remote, no more packets. The learning, the instruction needs to be more robust, and so they're very clear of that. And one other really, really important piece that I want to mention is that the Department of Ed, well, DESE, hearing from stakeholders, are very specific about discipline and students. So if a student is unable to wear a mask, or thinking of my own son, if he's unable to, if he's lost skills during this time, how that looks for him when he returns is not to be looked at as something that needs to as a discipline issue. That they need to be mindful that our sons and our daughters have lost skills, have high anxiety, have social emotional needs, and that through the lens of what COVID has resulted in is how they're supposed to look at this. They are, and Russell Johnson was very clear about that. And so there's more to come about with that, but just know they're talking about that, and they're encouraging districts to be extremely mindful about having a positive approach to supporting students once they return to school. And you can, let me see. Okay. And so I mentioned that on July 30th, Russell Johnson will be here with us and with Maura to talk about school issues and what they're planning. And on July 23rd, like I said before that, he will be meeting with leaders and sharing additional guidance around what's on here. So compensatory services, as well as what they're calling additional services. So as parents, we are hopefully documenting in the best way we can what's been working, and keeping track of what's not been working, what services haven't been able to be provided, and the potential of compensatory. But also the department recognizes that there will be a need for additional services due to what COVID has resulted in loss of skills and that sort of thing. And I don't know how that's going to look because quite honestly, you can imagine there's going to be like a bottlenecking of meetings that need to happen, but there's more guidance to come on that, as well as the turning 22 And so some of those questions aren't necessarily able to be answered. We have been part of stakeholder groups regarding these things, but I would hate to speculate as to what is in that guidance yet, having not seen the final. It's not complete, the final draft. And then transportation. Transportation is another bit of future guidance that's to come within the next week or so. So you can switch to the next. I'm sorry, and so I mentioned this because all of this planning, you know, the reality is, I'm a realist. There's not going to be enough funding going around, right? We're seeing that in our own cities and towns, and the discussions around some districts laying off teachers, that sort of thing, and not knowing what's going to happen with the budget. I implore everyone, on August 11th, the census will be going to homes of people that haven't responded. And while we in Massachusetts are ahead of the game in terms of response rate, we still have a ways to go. I think we are at a 68% self-response rate. But the census, you can do it online. It's easy, it's safe, and it's so very important to complete that census, because that number of people that respond really equates to funding from the federal government. And congressional seats. So it's very, very important that we all make sure we share with our friends and family the importance of completing the census. The census is open until the end of October, but just to know, you can simply go online and complete the census. If you have any questions about that, you can contact me, and I can answer those questions for you. And I think I'm going to err on that's it, because I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I know it's so much information. But thank you.
When is school open?
Some districts, and I can't see the chat right now, but if anyone's shared what's happening with their own city, with their own district or school, but some students are in school right now for summer classes, and then you know,
I am still in summer school still.
Okay. Yep. So it depends on the district, and we won't know until, I'm going to guess, unfortunately the middle of August, whether or not and how and whether or not we are returning, and what that's going to look like. So it's going to be last minute, and that's unfortunate, but it's to come.
So Kathleen, thank you so much for following all of this incredible detail as it's developing. And I think a lot of questions are still focused on turning 22 and transportation and also compensatory. So we really look forward to that coming in. But do you want me to just zip through the chat here for you? Because I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I might be able to.
Okay. Erica started with talking about her daughter in remote ESY, remote speech, and she's doing okay. The mask issue. Yeah, I think all of us are struggling with the mask.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could say that, you know, the masks are required unless, you know, there are students who are not going to be able to tolerate the mask, whether it be for medical reasons. Obviously, like my son, he's a mouth breather, and that wouldn't be safe for him. But he also is unable to tolerate it. I got a cute picture and I put it on Facebook where he had one on, but believe me, that lasted all but 2 seconds. So there is guidance around students that are unable to, you know, wear masks. And so if they can, but if they're unable to, due to a disability or a medical reason, there is guidance around what that looks like. And also those students who need close supervision or nursing care. And it really speaks to sort of like a DSP. So the people that are supporting would be protected. And so it's an individual basis. But yeah, it's quite a concern.
And Jossie's wondering if parents have a say in the prioritization. And like
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think that there needs to be an open line of communication, and that if you are in touch with the school around why you feel that your son or daughter, if it's a clear-cut case, clearly they would be prioritized based on what's written in the guidance. But if there are other factors, I highly encourage parents to communicate that with the school district and identify. Don't assume that a district is going to have your student on that list for whatever reason. My recommendation is always be open to communicating. Even if you're not getting the best communication from your school for whatever reason, I encourage parents to reach out to the teachers or the administration or the special education office to have their their thoughts part of this process.
Yes. So first of all, On's question is are they translated? I have seen a lot of guidance translated. Kathleen, do you know specifically is all of this?
Yes, On. I thank you for asking that. Yes, it is translated. And if I don't have it in front of me, but it was translated. And I want to say just visually, maybe in 6 to 8 languages. That I'm just thinking about the spacing on the page from reading on the website, but I can get that to you.
Super. Paula, actually, do you want to unmute Paula? We'd love to hear if you have information about summer programs.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
So I do have a friend who is back in school. She is up at the North Shore Educational Consortium. She's teaching about 50 kids in her program that are 18 to 22. I'm actually going to see her today to actually go over what she's experiencing, but she's extremely concerned because a lot of those kids were out in internships and working programs, and all of them were canceled. So the difficult aspect is finding space for the kids. And I mean, obviously she can teach them in the classroom, but that was her biggest concern, was having the inability of space to keep these kids socially distanced. And keeping them masked and getting them to school. A lot of the parents chose to drive the kids because they weren't going to be able to keep them socially distanced on vans. So plain and simply, the parents are driving and picking their kids up to keep them safely distanced. And I mean, how much of a realistic expectation is that going to be for fall for parents to drive? It's not, plain and simply. So I'll see how it goes. I mean, they started on the 6th, so it's been a couple weeks. So I'm really curious to hear how she's managing it. But it's 18 to 22, as I said, and her kids are on the higher end of functioning, obviously, if they're out working in positions. But yeah, I can get back. I'd really like to have her on the call if she's able to do it on the 30th.
Sure,
Yes,
that'd be
great. Wonderful. Yeah.
So, and that connects to Danielle's question about the masks. It sounds like Kathleen answered that around the, in-school services, but what happens with transportation and, will that?
I kind of laughed at Ellen. She gave me 3 days. She said, "Do you make masks?" I said, yes. I made her 50 masks, and I laughed at her. Well, I laughed at her and I said, these are going to be lost by the end of the first week. I mean, all these poor teachers who are going to be buying masks along with pencils and everything else that they always buy, is that teachers are going to be buying masks in bulk for the kids to be safe. I mean, it's yet another expense for our teachers that are working so hard. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, and the mask, that Danielle's question, no, they wouldn't be able to deny services. I think it goes back to the DESE in several different locations has been very clear that, for social, emotional, behavioral reasons, medical, all those things are contingent upon whether or not a student can wear a mask. So they're aware of that, and it would be socially distancing, and also if the need be to be close to teacher or nurse or a support staff, that person would be fully protected.
So it'll probably mean some changes in transportation for those too, in terms
Yes.
of how many they can put, right?
I guess my concern, they've been very, very accommodating during the summertime. My concern is with an out-of-district placement so my daughter's at the collaborative and they rent their space in a public school. So I'm curious what's going to come September. If she isn't able to walk those halls with a mask on, how is that going to be worked around? Because it is a public school, and Hull Public Schools is using that space. You know, I'm curious if that's going to become an issue come September.
Yeah, and that I think goes back to the districts right now are going in and measuring their schools. A lot of our schools in the Commonwealth are very old and not up to code necessarily in some districts, and that really doesn't allow for the maximum easiest way to get kids back in school. But it's there's a lot up in the air. It's very, very concerning, but there's more guidance to come. DESE is aware of it, but I encourage folks who have anything to share. They do have the Return to School Working Group, but they let me see if I wrote it down here. If you go on the website, there's an email. I'll put it in the chat. Don't assume that somebody else already thought of what you're thinking of. My advice is always to share. Communication is really key.
All right, well, I think I'm gonna stop taking the chat for now so we can finish. And if people are interested in DESE only and don't want to stick around for a little bit more on DBS, why is my slide stuck? I can scoot out. That's weird. I'm stuck. All right, I'm gonna stop share and then reshare. Let me see why that's happening. Really, really weird. Okay. We're gonna have to go right from the beginning again, guys, sorry. Oh, look at it, just wants to stay on the slide. All right, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. So I thought I would share a little bit just quickly about reopening for us, because it obviously connects to DESE as well. But so first good news for Tyler, if you guys have heard me talking about it, is our pool reopened, and he's been taking online swimming lessons for 4 months. So it was like just so cathartic for him to actually get in the pool. So he's doing well. His school opened yesterday, or maybe the day before, but he is continuing to do virtual learning as the school prioritized people who were really in need of that structure. And luckily, this guy's doing okay with his online learning and other programs that we've been able to stick in there. So fingers crossed he'll continue to do well this way. And for Neil, I think most of you saw that the residential schools, special ed schools, got a nice boost this week with $16.1 million for their extraordinary costs during COVID, and to continue on to keep our kids safe. So this was, a huge, huge win for those schools. And a really good piece of news for me is that restrictions in Neil's residential program lifted a bit, not fully like the DDS guidance, but hugs are allowed. So on Saturday I will get my first hug in a month, and I'm very happy about that. So that's my update. But so we do have a lot on day programming. So if you want to stick around, we can go a little bit late today. And some of you probably have seen this. This is real basics, and some of you are in the throes of actually implementing and getting ready for this. So please feel free to jump in and give some feedback here. But we do know as we look at day employment and day hab programs opening that we have, you know, somewhere around 18,000 people affected. And we're thinking that eventually we will have about 50% back, but 25% starting. They're also thinking about 15% of these will continue on virtually indefinitely, and we don't know, but at least 15% of the initial group coming back will also get some virtual. And you know, the really good news is, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, is there is going to be some enhanced billing for these programs, and that's really due to all of your advocacy, the Don't Cut Us Out campaign, and the 27,000 plus letters that got to the governor and all the leadership at the State House. So we still need more. We need a lot more. They're enhancing the billing through 15-minute increments and for a mix of in-person and virtual, but we certainly need to keep the negotiations open and to keep pushing. So I'll tell you more about that later. But so I think what's kind of ironic about the reopening for adults here is that they are trying to, like DESE, prioritize people who really need to come back, but at the same time they're requiring this risk-benefit tool, which in a lot of ways drops off some of the people who most need to come back as they go through the risk-benefit tool. So, and then also I think it's really difficult for families. They're definitely part of this process of prioritization by filling out these tools, but a lot of us have no idea how our loved one is going to manage in the environment that we are supposed to be assessing before we've ever seen and before we've, you know, ever, you know, seen them in before. So it's hard. It's a lot of guesswork. And I think providers are really scrambling to pull things together. And, you know, I think there's just a lot of trepidation all around, but you guys will get these slides, so I won't go through all of them. Like I said, the logistics of planning for all of us, but these providers trying to put in place all of these requirements with transportation being really up in the air. And, you know, being able to maintain the physical distancing, how much staff is that really going to require? And especially in transportation, how will they do that? And if you look at the guidance, it's not 6 feet, it's really 113 feet. So these are tough requirements, and if you want to see the entire guidance for reopening, I put the link here, so you get that later as well. And we can talk more about this obviously in our coming webinars as well. But like I said, the negotiations are happening with Don't Cut Us Out, so we're really hoping for continued funding for day programming as we go forward. And the other thing that's going to come out today is a fact sheet that's going to go to the entire legislature. And this fact sheet has been created from your stories. So we were able to grab it from specific family stories we requested around the struggles of the day program not being open, to try to show the legislature how important stabilizing these programs are. And also we took them from our focus groups where people talked about the challenges of having their loved one home and what was working for virtual learning, because we still need funding for the virtual online piece for those who are going to stay at home or for those who have a hybrid mix of services. So thank you for those stories. They were super helpful, and we'll send that out to the legislature, but also make it available for all of you if you want to send it directly to your senator or rep, so they can continue to advocate for us. The only other thing I would mention is, I didn't put a slide in here around the budget, but we need to focus pretty intensely on that in the coming weeks. And we have been having a lot of meetings and talking about it, but a lot of our advocacy will turn specifically towards those line items and and making sure that people with disabilities are not left behind in this budget process. So look to that as our next big push on our tools. And I can hop back now to the chat. We didn't actually go that long because I kind of rushed through all that. Okay, so these are all pretty much still around the DESE. Does anybody have any other questions related to day programming or anything else? We can jump in. I'm gonna stop share.
Maura,
Yes.
could I just jump in?
Yes. Hi, Chris.
Hi, I just saw something on my phone that, so McConnell apparently has proposed a bill that's 1/3 the size of the HEROES Act. So I just want to emphasize that a lot to achieve what we want to achieve requires a lot of money, and it requires federal money, and the action is in the US Senate right now, and anybody who can reach out to relatives, particularly in other states, I just think we have to crash this US Senate right now, because if
Absolutely.
1/3 of the funding that was in the HEROES Act is not going to do it for anything. So anyway, that's just my furious comment.
Yep, we do. We really need to focus on the federal piece. Hopefully we won't have that kind of cut in that last package coming in. And also, you know, as the revenue comes in through the state, we need to make sure they're prioritizing our services. So a lot to do. Anybody else want to unmute? Okay, well, I think that was actually great to hear from everybody around the school, and, you know, stay in
Hello.
touch. Oh, is that you, Jared?
Yes.
You'll get the slides, I promise.
No, when is the school open?
Well, you know, it depends on your town. So where are you from? And we'll find out for you.
I'm in is Massachusetts.
Okay. Well, we'll get back to you on that one, Jared.
Thank you.
But thank you, everybody. I'm going to let everyone go, and I hope to see you next week, and hang in there and stay safe. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.